I used to believe that World War II, or any war for that matter, was actually about good versus evil, freedom versus tyranny. I used to believe that everything relating to the esoteric, spiritual, or abstract was just superstition and myth. Astral projection, remote viewing, non-human entities, that's all just nonsense, guy. We live in a nuts and bolts world, I thought, and someday we may even make contact with an advanced race of extraterrestrials. They might even brain gooder than us do, and they might even have cooler vroom vrooms than anything we've ever seen. Innovation and technology were the best things since sliced white bread, I thought. The scientific disciplines would almost certainly lead to nothing but better outcomes for humanity. As long as reasonable and moral judgment was used, the future would always be bright. Jack Parsons may have been a strange fella, but he sure contributed to the betterment of mankind. I used to believe that drinking cheap booze and eating pies all day was beneath me, that Schindler's List was an accurate portrayal of real-world events, and that Charlie Kirk was attracted to women. Suffice it to say, homies, I was wrong about everything. Nowadays, I've come to believe that humanity has been plunged into a sort of simulation. I believe that this occurred around the time of World War II. Those of you who are familiar with my older works may recall me saying such a thing in the past. I've realized that history as we know it is little more than a propaganda piece penned by BuzzFeed's older, senile uncle. Our knowledge of the past essentially comes from an archaic version of Wikipedia. And just like that esteemed site, gatekeepers and vested interests worked around the clock in order to maintain their precious narratives. I've discovered that there's more to the esoteric and spiritual than just crystals, superstition, and bad hygiene. I've come to let go of my dumb fantasy of being rescued by a peaceful and advanced race of extraterrestrials who can totally brain more gooder than any of us can, and who have cooler vroom vrooms than anything we've ever seen before. I've learned that I'm more likely to encounter Charlie Kirk down at the Leather Daddy than at the Upstanding Patriot, and that he's more interested in dancing with his 5 friends than in sharing the truth with the rest of the world. I've learned that the technology around me, as great as it can be, is little more than a landmark on the way to a dystopian hellscape. Alright, so Charlie Kirk's into men, and Steven Spielberg movies aren't that accurate. Our technological elite are busily preparing to tag and track us while also prying into our most private affairs, and history has been carefully crafted by the CNNs and Breitbarts of their day. New Agers and religious folks might be a little smelly and a little crazy, but what if they're not entirely wrong? I know that all of these things seem unrelated at first, but I assure you that's not the case. I said that I felt as if much of the world was plunged into a simulation around the time of the Second World War. For a while now, I've attempted to figure out exactly why it is that I felt that way. Perhaps it was because the good guys won so incredibly hard that they forced humanity into a sort of benevolent video game, like a version of Tron, only with more rainbows and fluoride. Perhaps the bad guys actually won, which is why they went down to Antarctica and built some badass flying saucers, content to let the rest of the world succumb to the tight-fisted ways of the bankers and the, Russians. Perhaps this whole thing only exists in my mind, like some sort of intolerant vestigial organ, and we're all about to be saved by Windows Boy and Neuralink. Perhaps I'm the problem, not the system, and I simply need to open my heart and mind and butthole to the good word, sponsored by Wells Fargo and the World Economic Forum. Okay, but on a serious note, I started looking into specific reasons for why I felt like we had been plunged into a fake and rainbow simulation. I discovered a lot of interesting history surrounding the formation of the modern security state, mostly in the form of executive orders. I even watched this cool show on the History Channel that said it was probably the aliens, and Roswell, the thing at Roswell. Whoa, an orb. Did you guys see that? That's all the proof I need. Obviously, the secrets of the universe are something that the History Channel would broadcast to the great unwashed. Maybe I'll pull up a video about the Tic Tac UFO and leave a comment saying that I bet the aliens want to help us, but that when they see how intolerant and mean we are, they're gonna leave. Ha! I bet the aliens would stop here and help us, but they see Donald Trump and leave, am I right? LOL? I bet the aliens would see Hillary and run away screaming LMAOROTFL! Exclamation point, exclamation point, one exclamation point. Anyway, there were several factors that came close to approaching what I was looking for, but none of them had that sort of beefy meat, that girth that people like Charlie Kirk find so appealing. None of the things I looked into felt adequate in justifying what I was looking for. No combination of the ideas that were freely available to me sufficed in explaining the bigger picture. I began to lose hope. Only, as I pondered the situation for months, I began to imagine things. Strange things. Terrifying things, even. I imagined scenarios in which men were dosed with powerful chemicals while they were hooked up to strange machines, and they would be put into darkened chambers or pools of icy water for hours at a time. I imagined that when they were pulled out of the darkness, when they were revived or given an injection that brought them back to sobriety, they would then be handed a piece of paper and a pencil, and they would start to write. Or maybe a tape recorder would be set in front of them, and they would be asked a series of questions. And what sorts of fruits did these interrogations and debriefings result in? Things so wondrous we can hardly imagine. Formulas that were so elaborate they would make a high school geometry teacher cry. Blueprints so elegant that they would give Tesla a boner. Information so complex that only a team of the best and brightest across a number of disciplines could even begin to put it all together. But it wasn't just sunshine and Grammy crackers, friends. Sometimes the person who had gone under would only recall bits and pieces of what they had been told. Sometimes their memory would be faulty. Sometimes they would go mad from the things they had been exposed to. And sometimes they never woke up at all. And the methods to achieve the desired results didn't stop there. Things became progressively darker. The success rate wasn't that high when willing adults were sent into the beyond, no matter what chemicals were pumped into them. More coercive methods began to come into play. The subjects that were sent into those dark places weren't always of the willing variety, and they started to become younger and younger. The post-session interrogation became increasingly confrontational and menacing. It came to a point where the entire room, the entire scene, bore the distinct hallmarks of terror and suffering. The scenes before me began to resemble something like a movie set mixed with a nightmare, like high science mixed with a voodoo ritual. Maybe this all sounds like fiction to you. Show me an authoritative source for these things, the enlightened skeptic says as he steps into line for the latest injection of Hegelian salvation. If any of this was close to the truth, then why hasn't the History Channel aired a show about it, says the Stranger Things fan. I encourage you to look into things yourself and make up your own mind, but I'll speak plainly. There is a thing, or there are things, that don't have bodies like we do. They exist in a world that can't be easily explained with the terms that we are most familiar with. The dimensions that we are used to are irrelevant in the ecosystem from which these things hail, and they take for granted that which we value above almost anything else. They are clever and cunning. They come bearing smiles and promises of benevolence, but they are madness itself. I don't know for sure if they are more interested in destroying us or in being able to experience existence as we do, but that's almost beside the point. They gift knowledge in return for the performance of certain deeds, and those deeds universally lead to the harming of innocence and the destruction of the living. No matter how gilded the cages they offer, no matter how ornate the machines they give us, no matter how beautiful the sword they trick one into falling upon, they offer nothing but suffering. They are skilled negotiators, and they are very much able to get what they want. If only you would let us through, we could offer you utopia. If only you traded places with us, we could show you wonders. Build a black box for us and step inside of it. Build a system that puts us in control as you do so. Next time, cut your finger before you request an audience with me. Next time, kill a small animal before you name me. Earlier, I said that I was searching for something, an explanation for what it was that preceded all those strange encounters in the 1940s and the 1950s. What was so important that a compartmentalized world needed to be constructed around it? I believe that I may know the answer to that question, but the hour is late and I am all out of pies. For now, this is where I leave you.